Good morning, Willowbrook. If you've read our chapter today, then you know that reading this chapter is tedious. It's really about as enjoyable as taking a walk through a cemetery. You might even wonder why this is part of our deep dive. As I began to look at this chapter, I too just thought, that's really repetitive for our people. But what you were looking at is the genealogy of the human race from Adam to the flood. It's exciting to see the history, and as we look at it from the first age of the world, that is creation, and the ending of the old world, which was the flood. The Apostle Paul would call this one of the endless genealogies for Jesus. It was the end of the Old Testament law, the end of the Old Testament genealogies, and the Messiah, it pointed to him, the one they were looking for. Jesus tells us that Scripture speaks whenever we open it about him. And since this is Scripture, there are things that we need to see even when we feel like we're just walking through a cemetery. We begin in Genesis 5:1 with the words, "This is the written account of Adam." Now, the Hebrew words there literally translate to biblios genesis. And I probably mispronounced that because I'm tired. And this phrase appears another 2 times in the Scripture. One in Genesis 2:4, where it says, "This is the book of the generations of the heaven and the earth." And then we see it in Matthew chapter 1, where it says, "This is the genealogy of Jesus Christ." Genesis chapter 5 is looking forward to Matthew 1, and Matthew 1 is alluding to Genesis 5. Why? Genesis 5 is the genealogy of the first Adam, and Matthew 1 is the genealogy of the last Adam. The head of the old creation was Adam. And the head of the new creation, the new Adam, is Jesus. Now, Genesis 5 gives us the genealogy, but the genealogy is going through Seth. Now, this is the promise that God made to Adam and Eve, that the Messiah would come through that lineage and not through the lineage of Cain, because Cain had committed the sins. This is why we're seeing this opening up with that creation. The Messiah was going to come, and he was going to come through the line of Adam and through Seth. Now, I want to point out a few things that I think are exciting. And I want to jump all the way to verse 21. We see there that it says that Enoch lived 65 years, and after 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. Then we're told that Enoch walked faithfully with God. What does it mean to walk with God? It means intimacy. It's like me taking walks with my father. I think of me also walking beside my mentor, Chuck Williams, or walking beside my best friends, and we're walking together. In order to walk with God, we have to put him above everything. We have to honor him with our words and our actions. In the days of this genealogy, there were no churches, no life groups, no morning devos, no Bible. And still Enoch walked faithfully with God 300 years after the birth of Methuselah. Now, God didn't call us to walk faithfully for him when it was convenient for us. He didn't call us to just walk faithfully with him when we had a service project or a ministry opportunity. God, if he had only wanted service out of us, then he could have just used the millions of angels. They're serving spirits, and I think they could probably do the work for God much better than we can. Jesus calls us to be sons and daughters. Sons and daughters who walk faithfully with him every second of every day. Faithfully for 300 years, Enoch walked with God. It doesn't say that he quit living life. He worked. He took care of his family. He had more sons and daughters. He probably did back what's in our day travel ball and dance. He probably did that with his family and walked faithfully with God. Now, this chapter is also one of blessings and curses, because we see from Adam to Noah, we see that they took the command to be fruitful and multiply seriously. And yet, when you were born, you were old enough to die. And it really doesn't matter how long all the people in this genealogy live, because all of them died. Adam died. Seth died. Methuselah, the oldest man who ever lived, actually outlived Jared by 7 years. Jared lived 962 years. And Methuselah lived 969 years. Now, I can't imagine living that long, but also I can't imagine having children as late in life as these guys had kids. That's why I said that this is like walking through a cemetery. The words "he died" are repeated over and over again. The reality of death is very real. Death called each one of these men's name. They could not escape, and neither can we. This is the curse that was given to mankind from the fall in the Garden of Eden. But we also see light at the end of the tunnel through Enoch. Because when everybody lived and died, Enoch walked faithfully with God and lived. One day he went for a walk and he never returned because God just decided, instead of death, you're closer to me than you are to the earth, so come home with me. Now, this is an example for those of us who walk faithfully with God, because one day we'll be taken with God to be with him, and that's either going to come through death or through the rapture. One way or another, for me, it'll be fine, because as a Christian, I'll be with the Lord, and in the presence of the Lord, there's only fullness of joy. You know, when you look at Adam to Noah, I'm going to end in Noah because his name literally means rest and comfort. Noah, he's not going to bring us rest and comfort, not the kind of we seek. You know, that is a picture here of those who believe and follow God, because as we seek rest and comfort, God destroyed the people because they didn't follow him. The very things that happened, they deserved to happen to them. Only a few, a remnant, were saved. And God promises us, the picture through Noah is that God sent Jesus to save a remnant. As I travel through the world and I see people, I see their longing for rest and comfort. I see people wondering who's going to deliver them, who's going to come and relieve them from their suffering. You know, that's why I go into the world, and that's why you should go into the world, because the world does not need to be hopeless anymore. Jesus brings light into the darkness, and he brings comfort and rest to the broken. And I pray that you'll carry that message to all of those around you so that they can see Jesus. We've walked through the cemetery. I wish every name and their significance could be a separate sermon. But I wish you would just look, study who they are and what they did and why they're important. But know this, God saves. Get that word out.